Pat, let's transition straight from the injury to Seven Banks, integral part, hopefully, of the secondary play this fall into the secondary interviews that you conducted this week in the Ohio State media with new secondary coach Matt Barnes. And I got to think that was maybe one of the more interesting sessions that you've had and will have this spring, just because of so much attention given to a group that struggled last year.
For sure. Kerry Combs kind of ran that with Matt Barnes as kind of an assistant running the back end of the defense. Now they've readjusted things. Greg Madison obviously gone. They've shifted stuff around in terms of how they're divvying up positions, and Matt Barnes moves from what was mostly special teams to now coaching the secondary. And we've talked before. I think this is a good move. I think from people I've talked to that Matt Barnes, known as a good teacher of football, will do a good job, especially this time of year, of teaching these guys. And that's something he really stressed today, was that it's not so much about depth charts and schemes and stuff right now. It's more the technique, the teaching of football is kind of how he put it. And so that's been what they've worked on a lot here. These first, I think they're into practice 7 on Friday of spring practice. So that was the main thing he talked about. And the players, we talked to Marcus Williamson, slot corner, and safety Josh Proctor, and they kind of echoed that it's been a lot of focus on those type of things, that kind of the fundamentals and the football side of things, more so than figuring out who's going to go where. That'll come down the road in terms of positions. They're well aware that they did not play up to Ohio State standards last year, and that has to be fixed. Marcus Williamson said that's in the past. While the Buckeyes are aware of it, Josh Proctor even said that Alabama game is something they're using as motivation. While they're aware of it, they're focused on what they can control now and getting better moving forward, and that's a day-to-day thing more than all the way looking towards next season. So, I think it's a smart approach by Ohio State, really getting down to kind of the nitty gritty of playing the position and getting all that, out of the way here early in spring before you really start to dive into the scheme of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, which will be very important. But you obviously have a lot of time before you open the season against Minnesota in early September.
I'm sure you get pelted with those questions almost on a daily basis, because I don't even cover Ohio State consistently, and it's almost every day that people are asking about schemes and what are we going to do to change the scheme, because it's always the scheme. We can play a better system. So what are we going to do to fix the system? So we're still in spring football. We've got 6 months to go until these guys are going to be on the field for games at least. And so, yeah, one step at a time, and teaching the fundamentals right now. And again, the thought process for some might be, hey, these guys have played so much football and they're top-notch prospects. Do we really need to teach that much? And yeah, you really do. The coaches talk about that with every position, that pretty much starts once they get back to conditioning in January and into spring ball in February and March, that they're going back to teaching stances, even to the rudimentary of football, to make sure that everything's buttoned up.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And, I think if you let that get sloppy, you don't work on that throughout, the year at some point, that's when you start to have issues. It's the little details, I think, that make the difference when you get into big games. You can get by playing some teams in the Big Ten without some of the fundamentals, some of the details. But, when you get down the road and play some of the Big Ten championship, some of the better teams in the Big Ten, the college football playoff, that's where details become very important. And, one thing I think that probably doesn't get talked enough about is they missed that time last year, not only last spring, but any works that they would have done in the summer, until they were allowed back in June at the facility, that wasn't there. And obviously they can't work with coaches in the summer, but they can work with each other. They can do different things, and I think that certainly hurt a secondary that, really only had one starter back, and he was playing a new position. So, you hope, and it sounds like that they're handling this right this offseason and taking advantage of the fact that you do have spring ball and you can get better at those things that maybe, as you said, fans don't think about, but are very important.
Yeah, and especially on the defensive side of the ball, have that become muscle memory and not something that they have to think about, because any coach will tell you a thinking athlete on defense is probably a step slow. If they're thinking too much, there's got to be a thought process there to a certain extent.